Elias stood in the empty bedroom. Sunlight streamed into the empty room. He peeled old tape from a bedside table. A folded paper lay beneath it. The paper was yellowed. His fingers traced the faded ink. It was a list. Welcome, it began, in neat, looping script. Then a series of numbered items. The first rule stood out. Never look under the bed after 2 a.m. A cold shiver ran down Elias's spine. The words felt too heavy. He looked beneath the bed frame. A faint scraping sound began. It came from beneath the slats. Scrape, pause, scrape. His breath hitched in his throat. The air in the room grew suddenly heavy. The quiet turned sinister. What had he just moved into? Silas hummed softly as he trimmed the rose bushes. The morning sun warmed his shoulders through his thin shirt. A sweet, damp scent of jasmine drifted from his own garden. He heard the distant drone of a lawnmower, a comforting, steady sound. His gaze moved, as it often did, to the house next door. Elias's new home stood silent and stark against the morning sky. No curtains hung in the empty upstairs window frames. A subtle shift in the light caught his eye within the glass. He thought he saw a figure, barely a shadow, move behind the pane. Silas paused, his pruning shears held still in his grip. A faint, cold breeze rustled the rose leaves near his ear. It felt out of place on such a warm, clear morning. He had lived on this quiet street for 40 years. It had always been a predictable, safe place to be. Now, an odd, heavy stillness settled over everything around him. The gentle hum of the neighborhood felt suddenly muted. A prickle of unease ran down his arms, raising goosebumps. The familiar sense of safety had begun to fray at the edges. He looked back at the silent house, a frown deepening on his face. A new kind of unsettling quiet had arrived with the new neighbor. Silas lowered his pruning shears, his eyes fixed on the house next door. The morning light brightened the empty upper window. He leaned slightly, trying to catch the angle. No curtains hung there. No furniture stood within the bare room. Yet for a brief moment, the glass seemed to ripple. It was not the wind moving the pane. The glass itself appeared to twist inwards, like heated sugar. A faint, high-pitched hum reached his ears. It was barely audible, a vibration against the quiet air. The hum did not come from the distant lawnmower. It seemed to originate from deep within the silent house. Silas took a hesitant step closer to the property line. The sunlight warmed his face, but a sharp chill ran down his spine. The reflection in the window shimmered back at him. It showed his own garden, but subtly distorted. The roses in the glass appeared to bend at impossible angles. The sky in the reflected pane was a darker, bruised blue. He felt a growing sense that his eyes were playing tricks. This was not a familiar optical distortion. This was a deliberate, unsettling wrongness. Silas stepped back, then forward again. He squinted at the window. Perhaps it was just the sun's angle, a trick of light. He shifted his head, trying to see past his own reflection. The warped roses twisted with his movement. The bruised sky remained, a stark blue. He walked a few paces to the left. The distortion followed him. It moved too cleanly, too deliberately to be mere refraction. This was no simple ripple in old glass. He remembered the faint hum. He listened intently, straining his ears against the morning quiet. A soft thrum vibrated the very air, a low pulse deep within the silent house. It was a sound without a source. Silas rubbed his chin, a growing unease settling in his gut. His mind searched for a common cause. He looked for a hidden prism or a peculiar material. Nothing offered a normal answer. The house stood still, yet the window pulsed with an unseen energy. The world inside the glass seemed to bend to its own rules. His sense of ordinary logic began to fray. Silas was at the window. He heard the hum again, louder now. It was not just in the air. It vibrated through the floorboards beneath his feet. A cold draft swept through the room. Though all doors and windows were shut, he shivered. The light from the bruised sky outside began to flicker. It was like a failing lamp, not the sun. The distorted roses in the glass pulsed with the light. Their twisted forms seemed to stretch. Silas reached out a hand. He touched the cold pane. A faint static spark jumped from the glass to his fingertips. He gasped, pulling back his hand. The hum deepened into a low thrumming sound. It resonated in his bones. His head began to ache, a dull pressure behind his eyes. The room seemed to tilt. His vision blurred at the edges. He stumbled back, losing his footing for a moment. The familiar hallway twisted around him. The house was no longer still. It was alive with an unknown force. His sense of place vanished. The thrumming intensified. It was no longer just a sound. It was the house itself. Walls rippled like water. The floor beneath Silas's feet buckled. A crack spiderwebbed across the plaster ceiling. Then the crack widened. It split open. Beyond the familiar plaster, darkness bloomed. It was not empty space. It was a void that stretched back. Eons seemed to pour from it. Ancient stone pillars emerged. They spiraled into the impossible blackness. They were too large for any house. They were too old for any structure built by man. Silas stared, his breath caught. His mind struggled to grasp the scale. He felt a crushing pressure in his chest. The cold deepened to an absolute zero. A deep, slow pulse echoed from the void. It was the beat of something immense. He was standing on the threshold. He was at the edge of something terrifying and vast. A pulse quickened, a low thrum against Silas's bones. Dust motes danced in the gloom, illuminated by an unseen glow. He felt the house straining. More cracks tore across the plaster ceiling. Chunks of plaster detached. They fell into the bottomless darkness. Silas stepped forward. His hand reached out, trembling. Primal fear screamed within him, urging him back. But a strange pull drew him onward. The ancient pillars hummed with silent energy. A faint, high-pitched whine grew from the depths of the void. It was a sound of immense pressure. It was the sound of fabric tearing. The air grew thick, like liquid stone. The floor shuddered violently. Silas braced himself. He was a small figure on a precipice. The known world collapsed behind him. The unknown world beckoned, vast and deep. The floor lurched sideways. Silas cried out, a raw sound lost in the growing chaos. His fingers scraped against rough stone, seeking purchase. He gripped the ancient pillar, knuckles white from the strain. The high-pitched whine intensified, morphing into a deafening shriek. It tore through his ears, vibrating deep within his skull. A blinding, formless flash erupted from the darkness below. It filled the entire chasm, erasing all shadows. Silas squeezed his eyes shut, but the light burned behind his eyelids. A searing pain shot through his temples, a pressure unlike any he knew. He tasted ash and ozone, a metallic tang on his tongue. The very air seemed to tear, a fabric stretched beyond its limits. He felt a sickening displacement, a wrenching pull in his gut. His body became impossibly heavy, then strangely weightless. The pillar he clung to vibrated violently, humming with an alien rhythm. Fear turned into a primal scream, trapped and voiceless in his throat. He was no longer in the familiar structure of a house. He was adrift, unraveling in something vast and utterly terrible. The cold dread seeped into his very bones, chilling him to the core. The ancient structure around him groaned its last, a sound of final surrender. Then, a profound, gut-wrenching drop began. Silas lay sprawled on cold, gritty earth. The deafening shriek had ceased. A profound silence now pressed against his ears. He slowly opened his eyes, dust caked on his eyelids. Above him, no ceiling or familiar sky stretched. Instead, endless violet hues bled into unknown stars. The air was thin and sharp, carrying the faint scent of minerals. The ancient pillar he'd clung to lay shattered nearby, just fragments now, his vision blurred, then sharpened, showing a desolate landscape. Jagged, obsidian mountains pierced the twilight horizon. Cracked plains of silvery dust spread out in every direction. The comforting weight of gravity felt subtly different, lighter somehow. He pushed himself up, his muscles aching with an unfamiliar strain. The ground under his palm vibrated with a faint, deep hum. He was no longer in the known world. A quiet dread settled deep in his chest. Everything familiar was gone. He was utterly alone under an alien sky. The world was profoundly, irrevocably changed. Silas stood on the dust plains. The faint hum vibrated through his bones. He looked to the jagged obsidian mountains. They seemed impossibly far away. The silvery dust shifted under his boots with each slow step. No wind stirred the alien ground. He felt the thin air burn in his lungs. Above him, unfamiliar constellations wheeled slowly. Each star was a needle prick of cold, distant light. His own ragged breath sounded loud in the immense quiet. He was a small, fragile thing in a place without end. The violet sky deepened to black at the zenith. He scanned the horizon for any sign of movement, any life. There was only the stark, empty landscape stretching forever. No echo of his past world remained in this desolate realm. Only the profound, chilling silence answered him. He felt like a forgotten mote in an indifferent, silent void. The silence pressed in, a heavy weight on his chest. He wondered if his old world still existed, far beyond memory, or if he had fallen into a place from which no one ever returned.